What if everything you thought you knew about the biggest names in music was a lie? What if behind the glitz and glamour there was a web of manipulation, betrayal, and dark secrets? Stay with me as we dive into the shocking truths about Jay-Z, Diddy, and the dark side of the industry. You won't believe what we're about to uncover. The weight of 50's words lingered in the room, pressing down on me. Thousands. The gravity of it was hard to fathom. Thousands of lives, each one entangled in a system that had preyed on their ambitions, their dreams, their vulnerabilities. Some of these people had been completely unaware that they were pawns in a game far larger than they could ever have imagined. Others had been used, then discarded once they no longer served their purpose. And still, there were those who had known the cost of climbing to the top, and they'd paid it willingly, though at what price? I looked at 50, trying to process everything. He was a man who'd been to the depths of the game and back, who'd fought battles both public and private. And now he was telling me that the corruption ran far deeper than I'd ever thought, that the faces we saw on billboards and magazine covers weren't just the victims of the industry's dark underbelly, they were often the architects of that very darkness. "You think it's just a few bad decisions, huh?" 50 said, his voice low and laced with bitterness. "It's not that simple. It's not just one mistake, one betrayal. This is a pattern, a way of life. It's how things have always worked, at least at the top." I nodded, absorbing the weight of his words. What was being revealed here wasn't just a scandal. It was a systemic breakdown of everything that the music industry and maybe even the world itself had been built on. The foundations of ambition, success, and wealth had been tainted by greed, manipulation, and exploitation. The very same artists that fans worship were often complicit in that system, their smiles and their charm masking the corruption beneath the surface. 50's gaze hardened, his eyes narrowing with purpose. "Do you think Jay-Z is different? Do you think he's some kind of exception? Look, he's not the only one. They all know. They all know what goes on behind closed doors. The only difference is how much they're willing to turn a blind eye to, and how much they're willing to protect." The idea of Jay-Z being part of this, of him knowingly turning his back on the people who had built his empire, was a bitter pill to swallow. It wasn't just about him standing idly by, it was about his silence. His calculated silence, choosing to stay above it all while the world around him crumbled. It was worse than complicity, it was a strategy. If you were someone like Jay-Z, who had ascended to the heights of the industry, whose influence stretched beyond music, you had to keep your hands clean. The story had always been about him rising above the noise. But the question remained, had his silence been a clever maneuver to protect his empire? Had he turned away from the truth, from the suffering of others, in order to maintain his position at the top? "Do you think he sleeps at night?" I asked, the words escaping me before I could stop them. 50 didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable, before he gave a short, almost amused chuckle. "He probably does, but if he does, he's a damn good actor. Either that or he's so deep in his own illusions that he doesn't care anymore." The truth was, as unsettling as it was to consider, 50 had a point. The silence of Jay-Z and those like him had allowed the machine to keep running. Every inch of that system was built on the backs of people who were told to sacrifice for success. But it wasn't just those on the bottom who had paid the price. Those at the top had their own debts to answer for, and the longer they stayed silent, the deeper the corruption sank. 50, how deep do you think this goes?" I asked, already knowing the answer. I was bracing myself for what was to come next. His smile was cold, but it carried a sense of inevitability. "Deeper than you could imagine. You have no idea how many people are involved in this or how far the chain goes, but trust me, it's a lot more than just a few names. You'd be shocked to know who's really pulling the strings." The pieces of this puzzle were starting to fall into place, but they only revealed a darker, more complex picture. I realized this wasn't just about one scandal or one betrayal, it was about everything that had been swept under the rug for years. All the secrets, the dirty deals, the lives ruined in the name of power and profit. It was a game where only a select few got to win, and everyone else was left to pay the price. As the conversation shifted to the next steps, I felt a deep sense of unease mixed with something else, determination. This wasn't just about exposing the darkness within one person or one moment. This was about dismantling the system that had perpetuated this kind of cruelty for years. It was about giving a voice to the ones who had been silenced, to the ones who had been erased from the story. I turned to 50, my resolve hardening. If this gets out, if the world knows what's really been happening, how do we stop it from happening again? How do we ensure this doesn't continue? 50 looked me in the eye, and for the first time I saw a flicker of vulnerability in him. We can't stop it overnight, but we can start by telling the truth, and we can start by making sure the people who have been hurt finally get heard. No more silence, no more hiding. For a moment, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't about tearing anyone down for the sake of revenge. It was about shining a light on the unseen, the unheard. It was about making sure that the people who had been exploited, who had been cast aside in the pursuit of power, finally had their moment in the sun. The implications were massive. This wasn't just about one man or one moment in time. This was a movement that would take down the walls of secrecy that had protected the corrupt for far too long. It was about making sure that no one, not even the most powerful, could get away with living in the shadows of lies. But even as the idea of taking action took root, a part of me couldn't help but wonder, would it be enough? Would the truth ever really see the light of day? Or would the powers that be, with all their wealth and influence, find a way to bury it once again? As I looked at 50, I knew one thing for sure: no matter what, the fight was on, and there was no turning back now. The game had changed. Gene Deal's words hit with a sharpness that resonated through the room. I have 3 victims who are ready to speak about what Jay-Z and his wife did to them, and trust me, it's ugly. The way he said it, without hesitation, without a shred of doubt, made the air around us seem to tighten. Each word carried a weight, a promise of devastating revelations that could rock the foundation of the entire industry. If these victims came forward, the fallout would be catastrophic. It wouldn't just shake the power structures at the top, it would make the whole world question everything they thought they knew about these icons. But it wasn't just about the victims anymore. Gene was laying bare the unspoken truth that so many had kept hidden for so long. Jay-Z and Diddy weren't just connected by business interests, they were close. Gene's tone suggested a camaraderie between them that went beyond industry rivalry. The public had been led to believe that Jay-Z's relationship with Diddy was strictly professional, if not somewhat contentious at times. But Gene insisted that the reality was far darker. Jay-Z's knowledge wasn't just peripheral. No, he had a front-row seat to the corruption, the manipulation, and the decisions that were made behind closed doors. And yet, despite being aware, Jay-Z had done nothing. His silence, in Gene's eyes, was as damning as any active involvement. Jay-Z knew, Gene insisted, his voice steady but firm. He knew what was going on, he understood it all, and he chose not to act, he chose to stay quiet for his own benefit. This wasn't just a critique of a business partner's inaction. It was an indictment of someone who had made a conscious choice to protect their own interests over the well-being of others. The silence was a shield, but it was also a weapon. By staying quiet, Jay-Z had allowed the cycle of exploitation to continue. And that, in the eyes of those who knew the truth, made him just as guilty as the ones actively pulling the strings. And as the web of complicity grew, so did the legal risks. Rumors swirled that the silence wasn't just voluntary, it was coerced. There were whispers that some who were close to the situation had been pressured, threatened, or manipulated to keep their mouths shut. That was the real danger. If the truth ever came to light, if these voices were finally given the space to speak, it wouldn't just raise questions about corporate malfeasance. It would open the door to criminal activity, bribery, blackmail, and cover-ups. Allegations were mounting that Jay-Z and others involved had knowingly allowed illegal activity to flourish, turning a blind eye for personal gain. And that was a game changer. Then, as if the storm couldn't get any darker, Jaguar Wright, a name not unfamiliar to the public, added fuel to the fire. Jaguar, a figure who had long been outspoken about the corruption in the music industry, had publicly echoed many of the accusations. And yet, every time she spoke out, her interviews seemed to vanish from the public eye, quickly scrubbed from platforms and media outlets. It was as if someone somewhere had decided her voice was too dangerous to be heard. But Jaguar didn't back down. She refused to be silenced. She kept speaking, her voice growing louder with each passing interview. But then, just as the walls seemed to be closing in around her, tragedy struck. Jaguar's son was killed in a shooting. The timing was chilling, and it didn't take long for the rumors to spread. Some people saw a direct connection between her outspoken stance and the untimely death of her son. It was a theory that rattled people to the core, but it was important to note that there was no official evidence linking the two events, no verified connection. Yet the parallels were impossible to ignore, and in the world of conspiracy, where every move was scrutinized and analyzed, the tragedy seemed to deepen the sense of foreboding surrounding Jaguar's accusations. In her grief, Jaguar's voice broke, her emotions raw and exposed. "He died because of you," she said, her words trembling with pain and accusation. "He was targeted because he's my son. He had dreams, plans, but they took him. They took his future. They took his life, and for what?" Her grief was palpable, but so was the anger. She was accusing those at the top of stealing not just her son's life, but the very essence of his potential. In her mind, this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was a direct result of the system she had been fighting against, a system that had no qualms about tearing down anyone who dared to challenge it. Jaguar wasn't just mourning her son. She was calling out the forces that had been operating in the shadows for years, the same forces that had built their empire on the backs of others. Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything she had seen and lost. It wasn't just a plea for justice, it was a demand for accountability. And yet, as powerful as her statement was, the world wasn't ready to hear it. The truth was still buried beneath layers of manipulation and secrecy. For every voice like Jaguar's that called for justice, there were 1,000 voices working tirelessly to silence it. Jaguar's pain is a constant, raw undertone that echoes through every word she speaks. The weight of her grief is unimaginable, and yet she has no choice but to carry it. She had done everything she could to shield her son from the very industry that had destroyed so many lives, including her own. She moved her family to a quieter, safer place, thinking she could give her son the chance at a normal life, far away from the corrupt world of fame and power. But in the end, the darkness followed them. The forces she tried to protect him from found their way in, and now her son was gone. Jaguar is not simply mourning his death, she is channeling her anger, her sorrow, and her sense of betrayal into a mission. She won't let her son's life or his death be in vain. She's committed to exposing the truth no matter the cost. For her, justice is no longer a choice. It's the only thing left that could possibly make sense of the senselessness. And now her voice is returning to the public eye, with 50 Cent playing a key role in resurrecting these buried allegations. The accusations that Jaguar has long whispered in private are now being brought to light once again. Her words aren't simply about rehashing old grudges, they are explosive claims that could change the narrative of the music industry forever. She's digging into the past, and she's starting with one of the most high-profile, tragic events of the industry, the death of Aaliyah. Jaguar's perspective on Aaliyah's death is chilling. She's not just asking why the singer had to die so young, she's asking why there was no full, transparent investigation into her death. Her questions are pointed, accusing the powers that be of deliberately brushing aside the truth. Why wasn't there a full, transparent investigation into Aaliyah's death, she demands. Why was it brushed aside, ignored? Why weren't there real questions asked, especially when there's so much we don't know? To Jaguar, there is no logical explanation. The facts surrounding Aaliyah's death have always seemed murky, but Jaguar insists that the pieces of the puzzle don't add up. She talks about the fateful flight that claimed Aaliyah's life, claiming that the singer hadn't even made the decision to board that plane. According to Jaguar, Aaliyah was unconscious at the time. There were phone calls made in the hours leading up to the flight, and more troubling still, she claims witnesses were made to sign NDAs. Why would you need to sign an NDA about a plane crash if it was just an accident? That doesn't make sense. None of it does, Jaguar argues, her voice rising in disbelief. To her, this wasn't about protecting privacy, it was about covering something up. She insists that over 25 NDAs were signed after Aaliyah's death, each one with the same goal, to silence anyone who might have known what really happened. Her accusations grow even more pointed when she focuses on Jay-Z. She asks the question directly. Why, she demands, would there need to be over 25 non-disclosure agreements for an accident? What does that say? Jaguar's accusations go far beyond questioning the circumstances of Aaliyah's death. She believes the whole situation was orchestrated by those in power to ensure that their careers were protected, regardless of the lives that had to be sacrificed in the process. In her view, Jay-Z wasn't just a passive player in the aftermath of Aaliyah's death, he was the one who benefited the most. Aaliyah was removed, she says bluntly. Removed so that Jay-Z could rise, so he could build the empire he has today. To Jaguar, this isn't just about a tragic plane crash. It's about a calculated, ruthless move by Jay-Z to eliminate a potential threat to his career. She believes Aaliyah's death wasn't just the end of a life, it was the key moment that allowed Jay-Z to step into the spotlight and claim the throne for himself. In her eyes, Aaliyah's talent and potential posed a risk to Jay-Z's ambitions, and the world will never know just how far he was willing to go to make sure she was no longer around to compete with him. Jaguar's suspicions don't stop there. She goes on to claim that Jay-Z's rise to the top wasn't a result of mere talent or hard work. She believes that his success was fueled by a cold, calculating desire for power and control. Jay-Z was never just about music, she asserts. He wanted control over everything, including the people around him. If they weren't useful anymore, he pushed them out. In Jaguar's mind, Jay-Z wasn't just a businessman. He was a manipulator, using his connections and influence to crush anyone who stood in his way. She points to Jay-Z's relationship with Dame Dash as an example. She believes that when Dame was no longer a valuable ally, Jay-Z discarded him, no hesitation, no second thought. He didn't care who he hurt, Jaguar says, her voice seething with disdain, as long as it got him closer to the top. The more Jaguar talks, the clearer her view becomes. Jay-Z wasn't just playing a game, he was setting the rules. He was building an empire, not just through his talent or connections, but through his ability to manipulate and control the people around him. And anyone who got in his way was disposable. For Jaguar, this isn't just about business practices, it's about something much darker. It's about the way power and control were manipulated, the way people were sacrificed for success. She's not just exposing a few dirty secrets, she's revealing the fundamental rotten core of an empire built on manipulation and deceit. And with every word she speaks, the more the web unravels, exposing the hidden truths that many would rather keep buried. Jaguar's narrative goes beyond the surface of the music industry. It's a scathing indictment of a system that uses power to control, manipulate, and silence those who dare to question it. For her, the rise of figures like Jay-Z isn't a simple story of talent and ambition, but one of calculated moves made at the expense of others. She believes that the industry, for all its gloss and glamour, is built on a foundation of darkness, on deals made in the shadows, on sacrifices, and on silencing those who could expose the truth. The Commission album is just one of many pieces Jaguar uses to paint a picture of the machinations at work. It's not just about the missed opportunity to release an album that was supposedly ready to drop after Biggie's death. It's about what that album represented, the final product of collaboration, of artistry, of Biggie's life. Yet when he was gone, it was buried. Why wasn't it released, Jaguar demands? Was it because Biggie was no longer there to promote it? Or was it because there was something more to his death, something that would have made that album a little too dangerous to put out? In her eyes, Biggie's death created a vacuum, and Jay-Z was just one of many ready to step in and fill it. The album's disappearance was no accident. It was part of a bigger, darker plan to make sure the industry stayed in the hands of those who knew how to control the narrative. It was as if Biggie's potential had to be erased in order for others to thrive. Jaguar's frustration stems from what she believes is a systemic problem. The music industry, to her, is a microcosm of a larger societal issue. Those who have power continue to accumulate more, often at the expense of the people who helped them get there. Jay-Z's rise, in her view, was a perfect example of that. He didn't just claw his way to the top with his talent and business acumen. He used manipulation, control, and the elimination of obstacles to cement his place. He didn't just win the crown, Jaguar asserts. He crushed anyone who stood in his way. For Jaguar, Jay-Z's method of success is clear. It's not just about outshining competition, it's about making sure no one can stand in your way once you're at the top. It's a pattern that repeats itself. When someone is no longer useful, when they become a threat or no longer serve a purpose, they are discarded. This isn't just about Biggie or Aaliyah or Rihanna. About a broader trend of erasing people when they no longer fit into the plans of those at the top. Jay-Z, she claims, has done this to many people, and it's a reflection of a deeper issue in the industry. The story of Rihanna adds another layer to Jaguar's accusations. She sees Rihanna's journey not as one of empowerment, but as a classic case of industry manipulation. Rihanna was a teenager when they brought her in, Jaguar points out. They didn't see her as an artist, they saw her as a commodity. From her perspective, Rihanna was groomed for the industry, shaped into something that could be packaged and sold to the public. Her image, her music, even her persona, everything was carefully crafted by those who held the power. The people around Jay-Z, Jaguar argues, used Rihanna to further their own agendas, treating her as little more than a pawn in a larger game. Jaguar's accusations aren't just about business. They're about power, manipulation, and the dehumanization of artists who are treated as disposable once they've outlived their usefulness. The industry has long been built on exploiting talent for profit, she claims, and those who speak out about it are quickly silenced. Her own story is proof of that. She believes that her voice has been muted by the very people she's trying to expose, and that's why she's determined to make sure the truth comes to light. I won't back down, she says with conviction. People need to know what's really happening behind closed doors. Her allegations about Aaliyah's death are another troubling part of her narrative. She claims that the investigation into Aaliyah's death was deliberately mishandled, that important questions were never asked, and that there was a concerted effort to bury the truth. Why wasn't there a full, transparent investigation into Aaliyah's death, she asks, her voice tinged with disbelief. Why was it brushed aside, ignored? Why weren't there real questions asked, especially when there's so much we don't know? For Jaguar, the circumstances surrounding Aaliyah's death are emblematic of a larger issue, one where the lives of artists are expendable if they're seen as obstacles to the greater goal of maintaining control over the industry. And when Aaliyah was removed from the picture, Jaguar believes it wasn't just a tragic accident, it was a calculated move to clear the path for others. This pattern, as Jaguar sees it, isn't limited to just a few individuals or incidents. It's a pervasive issue that has been happening for years. She believes Jay-Z is just one figure in a much larger web of manipulation and control. The industry, she argues, has allowed this behavior to persist, enabling powerful figures to maintain their grip on the system, while the voices of those who have been silenced fade into the background. And as these stories come to light, the question remains, will anyone listen? Will the truth finally be exposed, or will it remain buried as it has for so many years? The stakes for Jaguar are incredibly high. This is about more than just exposing Jay-Z or even the people close to him. It's about shedding light on the entire system, the hidden forces that control the narrative, the people who benefit from silence, and the artists who have been exploited along the way. Jaguar refuses to be silenced. She's determined to make sure that the truth is known, no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it may be for those at the top. But in a world where power and influence often go unchecked, the question remains, will the truth ever be allowed to emerge, or will it continue to be suppressed just as it has been for so long? If you found this story shocking, you're not alone. The truth about the music industry is darker than we ever imagined, and the more people hear about it, the harder it will be for them to keep hiding the truth. Don't let this story be swept under the rug. Share this video, comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories they don't want you to hear. Together, we can make sure the truth is heard.